Okay, so we'll move on to the first one in the open agenda is a draft submission for local government standing orders, and welcome Katie.
All right. Kia ora and good morning, councillors. As promised, I am back again to present the draft submission to the local government standing orders, and I will be seeking your feedback today to inform any further updates to the submission, which will then be presented to the council in December for your endorsement. A bit of background before we start, just to reiterate what I covered last week. So the Local Government Systems Improvement Amendments Bill does empower the Secretary to issue a standardized set of standing orders. The DIA commissioned Standard New Zealand to establish a development committee, which included representatives from 6 councils across the country and other stakeholder organizations to develop a standardized version of SO. These would be intended for all territorial authorities, regional councils, community boards, and all types of local authorities as defined under the LGA 2002. The work of the Development Committee culminated in the proposed LGSO, which is currently out for consultation. So on to the submission. In its introduction, the draft submission reiterates the Council's concerns around the suitability of standardized standing orders for all local authorities, as previously outlined in its submission to the System Improvements Bill. However, the submission does acknowledge some overall improvements in the proposed LGSO. One of these improvements is the structure of the LGSO, which is ordered to follow the flow of the meeting. The submission outlines its support for this framework, as well as the use of more specific headings and subsections. Further, the submission supports the use of cross-references to facilitate usability and consistent application of standing orders. The submission does, however, recommend various improvements to the formatting, particularly around the lack of white space and easily identifiable headings throughout, which does compromise its usability. Additionally, the terms of reference list only the main headings and none of the subheadings, which undermines the document's navigability. Finally, the submission recommends the inclusion of dual language headings in the LGSO. Te Reo Māori is an official language of New Zealand, and many councils use both English and Te Reo headings in reports, policies, and strategies. As a core governance document, the LGSO should also reflect both languages. As noted last week, the LGSO omits the long-standing principles section in the draft. This is something that the submission recommends for inclusion as it serves an important contextual function. Further, the submission addresses the exclusion of any reference to Te Tiriti o Waitani and Māori participation. The Council reiterates its partnership with Mana Whenua and strongly recommends that the principles section be reinstated and make provision for te ao Māori and local tikanga in meeting processes. From a usage standpoint, the submission also comments on the LGSO's attempt at distinguishing must from shall, both of which indicate a mandatory requirement. As this does little to clarify context and creates confusion for the readers, we are recommending that the simple use of must be employed across the document. While the requirement is based, where the requirement is based in legislation, this is clearly indicated through citation of the relevant legislative provision. Regarding the process for adopting and amending standing orders, the submission recommends ensuring that the proposed LGSO and amendments bill are aligned prior to publication. It should be clarified that the ability to amend standing orders relates only to those designated discretionary provisions, as the bill permits a standardized set of SO to be mandated by the Secretary. The submission outlines the Council's support for the discretionary matters related to debate procedure, the provision of a casting vote, and time limits for debate and public participation. However, noting the LGSO's mandate regarding meeting duration, which as a reminder is a maximum of 6 hours, including adjournments, and sitting no more than 2 hours without a break, the submission recommends that this be made a discretionary item as well, giving councils the flexibility to establish timeframes that reflect the needs of their communities and the scale of their operations. Regarding the LGSO provisions related to meeting agendas, the submission supports the clarity around agenda management and the delineation of responsibility between the chief executive and the chairperson. Further support is outlined for the CE's discretion to take into account significant cost or resource implications when responding to requests for reports. The submission also highlights support for the clear distinction between public forum and deputation requests and the process clarifications included in these sections. However, the submission and accompanying table of recommended wording changes seeks updates to certain provisions that clarify the participation restrictions and that these should apply to both public forums and deputations, and also to explicitly state that the meeting may request further information via a report in response to a matter raised in a public forum. So finally, we note our agreement with the updated petition provisions, as well as the new section regarding the hearing of submissions and the timeframes outlined in that section. So as discussed at last week's workshop, the LGSO includes a variety of updated provisions in the debate section, which offers some much needed process clarifications. The submission states its support for these provisions, including the clear delineation between questions of staff and debate, the explicit provisions around the timing of moving and seconding a motion and a procedural motion, the concise requirements set out for amendments to ensure these are progressed in accordance with our decision-making requirements, and the more clearly articulated process for raising and progressing a notice of motion. While we approve of much of the updated language in this section, there are some wording changes that we are recommending to ensure consistency across the LGSO. These are outlined both in the submission and in more technical detail in Appendix 1. As outlined last week, there are significant concerns around the accessibility of the LGSO. This is due to standard in New Zealand's stringent copyright provisions, which prohibit reproduction in whole or in part without prior written permission. Such unauthorized use could result in stiff penalties under the Copyright Act. The submission, therefore, strongly asserts the Council's concerns and how limiting a local authority's ability to share, publish, or reproduce its standing orders could significantly undermine transparency, accountability, and public trust. The submission further states its concern at the lack of information provided as to who will bear the cost of purchasing the standard, the distribution framework that local authorities would be bound by, and recommends with urgency that guidance on these matters be provided as soon as possible. And that's me.
Thank you, Katie. Mark, please. Then Vic.
Thank you. Largely good job on that submission. That's good. The one question I've got is around public forum and the potential lack of the ability to turn up at a, say, a community board meeting and be able to book in on the day to do a public forum. Is that not able to be done under this LGSO?
It would still be permitted. So the LGSO outlines a 1 clear working day request time frame. However, the chair of the meeting has the discretion to not implement that or require it. So if someone still were to rock up on the day, your chair would be able to have them speak.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Katie. I can see there's been a lot of work that's gone on to this, and I'm aware that you were on that working group, so you've had quite a significant hands-on role in shaping some of this. Is there anything during that process that you felt was I'm going to die on this hill for, that was a really big issue that didn't make it in, that you want to bring to our attention in terms of priority for us to be thinking about? Nothing massive. The committee actually worked quite well together. We were really responsive to one another's requests. They took into account the size and scale and scope of Christchurch City Council, so we were able to get some things into the proposed draft that we really wanted. The meeting duration is a concern still, just because that would force you all to constantly resolve to go over that duration. It doesn't really make sense from a procedural standpoint. But otherwise, we're pretty comfortable with the draft with some minor tweaks needed to make it clearer.
Yeah, thank you. Just wondering if there was any reference to sign
Sign language.
Yeah, New Zealand sign.
It is in the draft in a similar fashion as what you would see in our current standing orders, and says something along the lines of that any member of the public may present to a meeting in English, Toreo, or sign language, one of the 3 official languages. However, much beyond that inclusion for public participation, I do not believe it is referenced.
And is there any, so there's no reference to who picks up the cost of that?
No.
Surely could be in there.
No, I mean, I think our practice has been to cover the costs, as I understand it.
That I'm not aware of. I know that standing orders would request that if someone wishes to address the meeting in sign language, that they just give the chair and principal advisor a heads up so that accommodations can be made. But as far as to who bears the cost of that, that would sit outside of us, though.
We bear the cost.
Yeah.
Damn.
Megan was just noting
I
that she
imagine.
could have spoken into the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite difficult for us because it's quite hard to get sign language
Sign
people,
people,
but we do
yeah.
bear the cost of it.
Yeah, but I think just a kind of some sort of general provision around, you know, the intent of is if people want to come in and make a deputation or participate in a process, that we will actually, you know, work to provide interpretation. Yeah, that's what I mean. So yeah.
Yes, we can make a note of that.
Kelly, please.
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we perhaps look and see whether there's a dictation app that can be translated into sign language, perhaps not by a person, by a robot or something like that. Surely in this day and age, something like that must be possible. Perhaps we could investigate.
Okay. All good. Tim, did you Celeste, you did? Okay. All right. Good. Tim.
I just think with the sign language, it's a really good thing to bring up, but we do that anyway. We've always done that. We've had people come to us, but I think that we should work out, Mary, how long it takes us to organise a sign language interpreter and put that in our standing orders. So, for instance, if someone wants to come and present in sign language, then we have the staff have that time to put that together, because I don't see any reason making a big thing of it, because we do it already.
It's probably something we'd want to put in guidance to people rather than in our standing orders as such, which are about rules and procedures of the meeting usually. Yep, but good idea.
Yes.
So just to put, sorry, Katie.
Sorry. I will note that the draft LGSO, they do contemplate council policies and or protocols that will be stood up as a result of this to help fill in some of the gaps or to help councils articulate the specific needs of their own business. So public participation could be one of those, as well as attendance via AV link, stuff like that. So that is something that we would anticipate working on in accordance with when the draft LGSO become finalized. Yeah.
And cool. Thank you, Katie. A lot of work going into this, as a number of people have said, and we're so lucky to have you in the tent, so to speak. You might not think it's lucky, but we think you're lucky. So thanks for that. And just to remind councillors that the 3rd of December is when this will come for us to vote away. So if you've got any other burning questions that you want to grab Katie with, do that over the next short little distance.
Yes, by
and
Friday,
we'll see you on the 3rd.
Yes, if you have any further comments or suggestions, if you could get them through by Friday.
Okay, Friday. Yeah,
that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.